Today is about design thinking process, a process and the thinking way, also a framework, how to design your ideas to be relevant and for people to buy in. Because quite frankly, many ideas die out in the process because they are irrelevant, they don't solve any practical problems, and people simply don't need that. So for you, in order to design, to create some activities that has impact, that has results, which are required and needed, you have to follow some specific frameworks, steps that allow you to reach your target audience, to achieve your key performance indicators, and have impact on local or international levels. To begin with, design thinking is a way of thinking, a way of approaching the things. To begin, it fosters innovation and creativity because it's quite flexible. It's not fixed in one way. It's more like a flow that has steps. And how we achieve those steps, how we implement them, doesn't really matter. There are many ways to achieve it, and few of them I will be sharing also during this lecture. Design thinking also improves user satisfaction because whatever user is getting is more personal, more relevant to the user. There's a trap for ideators. For ideators, there is a trap that whatever idea we come with, we think it's the best. We think it's the most relevant, it's fantastic, and people will need it. However, it doesn't work like this all the time. And the fact that it's irrelevant for us, that it's paining, it's a pain for us, doesn't mean it's gonna be paining for others as well, and that it's worthy of solving. So going through the process allows you to really dive into your users, to refine what is your customer or who is your target group, and this way to find out their needs, their pain points, what is triggering them to look at you, to look at your idea and buy it and use it, and so on. So it improves satisfaction because the problems are actually being solved instead of just being covered or ignored. And quite frankly, organization projects are mostly about solving problems, actual real problems. Design thinking reduces the risk of product failure. That has connection with the second point, the fact that the higher relevance, the higher user satisfaction leads to higher adoption and usage of whatever you are producing as a product or a service or as a project idea. And of course, you want to be relevant and you want to be to reduce the risks of any kind of failures in the future or whenever you launch your product. Then, if we talk about collaboration, it also encourages cross-functional collaborations. In terms of that, it works with different disciplines, it works with different departments, and there is no limitation who can join or who are not relevant in this process, because it takes almost all organization involvement. There are more benefits in the process that you might also experience while you are practicing this thinking, this framework. But just not to expand too much, we go into the details. So as I mentioned, design thinking process is a thinking framework how to do certain things. So whenever we come up with the idea, let's say there's a project or a business or just an organization that you want to create, there is never a single way, a perfect way to do it, and at the same time there should be some methodologies being used in order to develop it. Design thinking is kind of a master methodology that encompasses some others in each step. As you can see, we have the first step, empathize with your customer, then is define the ideas, define the problem, ideate the ideas, make them as a test, prototype, or some kind of mock-up, test how it works, and of course launch it to the market. Now, how does happen in empathize situation or a step? This is more about finding the market, finding who is your target group. You might not know in the very beginning. You might be more general, saying that my customer is someone who has this problem, but it's not all about that. The simplest way how to approach empathize step is through interviews, discussions, debates, sending some surveys for people to answer them. Second way to understand, to gather some information and input about the problem or the context is shadowing, observing how certain things are being used or done. If it is some competition product, again, you can observe how people are interacting, what are their struggles, what you like, what you don't like, what you could improve or do different than your competitors. At the same time, shadowing allows you to see problems that you might not seen before or nobody has seen before, and just because you are observing or having deep interviews, structured or semi-structured, you understand how people actually feel, think, and where's the real problem, without any assumptions or delusional thinking. Then seeking to understand, meaning that you find any kind of ways to have an interaction with your customers, be it a conversation, be it some kind of event, feedback forms, and whatnot. Next, non-judgmental approach. This is probably the hardest way whenever you interact or have experience with your customers, competitors, or product or the service. Avoid making assumptions. Just look at the problem or look at the context situation with the kid's eyes. That has no assumptions whatsoever, has no motivations, no wishes, just seek to understand and see the process the way it is without any kind of iterations or assumptions. And that will give you most insights. That will give you most understanding how things are working. The next thing is to define personas, meaning that personas entails the characteristics, features, problems that people have, their age, geographics, probably income, race, religion, and so on. The more detailed, the better. Next is what are their role objectives or what they struggle with, what are they wanting to achieve, decisions that they make or cannot make, challenges they're facing, be it physical, mental, emotional, and pain points, meaning that what it really triggers them, what they want to achieve. Ideation is more about coming up with ideas. Brainstorming, this probably is the easiest path and everybody is used to it, and it's actually start from ideation and then defining the problem probably, or maybe going even into empathize stage. But we are back here. Ideation is also evaluating whether all ideas are worthy and having some kind of criteria how we're going to filter them, and to understand that some of them might work and some are not. How we do that, we come back to the empathize state, what we have learned there, definition of the problem, our persona, and then based on that we filter out our ideas. Then we have prototyping stage where we create visuals, mockups, testing materials or products for our product, service. It can be storyboards, something that you can iterate, something that you can present, test, and get some kind of feedback. There is no space here to spend too much. The faster you produce some kind of prototype, the better it is, because then from that you can learn it, iterate, evaluate, improve, ideate if you need, and again test, and if all goes well, you move to the launch. Testing is about understanding impediments, drawbacks, problems, things that might not work, understanding what works, also very important. If the customer gives the feedback that he likes something, of course you don't want to remove that. Role play, meaning that you also test the product yourself, allow to test it for a customer, do some kind of simulation how it is being used for the first time, and again iterate quickly, improve, and move on. So this is how we do design thinking, how we stay relevant to the ideas that we produce. Now, what has to happen, like how you actually do those steps? Empathize, well, working a little bit again over it, is to understand the user's needs, thoughts, and feelings. Techniques can be through interviews, observations, and immersion. These are just 3 options. They can be way more. It can be job shadowing, it can be surveys, it can be just observation, it can be literature reviews, reports, researches, it can be discussions, it can be events, it can be feedback forms, all kind of ways. All important here is that you have to get input, you have to get understanding of how things are working, where is the real problem, like where is the struggle. And as IDEOS says, to create meaningful innovations, you need to know your users and care about their lives. You cannot make assumptions that you know. You have to actually go meet your customer, meet your client, and even if you need, co-create that product or service, involving them in the process. Also, one of the ways how to do this research of the market, so to say, is using fishbone diagram. In this case, we define some kind of problem that we assume that is there, or a context, and there's 2 ways how we can proceed further. One way, we can draw as many lines here as we think is needed, which will represent the categories of the problem, the main categories, or we can use the way it is now, the context, a thing that we have assumption about, then what in machine section, what in methods section, what in manpower section is that contributes that problem, what are the symptoms in those areas that we know that problem is coming from there. Same goes for materials, mother nature, so external environment, probably also nature, and measurements, how we measure those things. To save the time and to just move on faster, I also add here a link where you can watch a more in-depth video, not very long, of course, few minutes, for which explains specifically how fishbone diagram is applied, what is it for, and how you can use it more precisely. Here is just a visual explanation, going overview really fast for you to just get the idea of that there's a way how we can approach problems more strategically and more structured way. Then moving forward, we have defining the problem. Like we have to frame the problem. So this step is important because if we move from empathizing, where we research the market, and we jump instantly to the ideation, skipping the definition, we actually might go with ideas. We might have ideas when we might come up with a prototype and which can work, but in this case we are lose the direction. Where is the real problem? Because they can be many, but we have to, our goal here in this case is to define the main one, right? So in this case we synthesize observations, we sum it up what we have learned in the process, right? In this step, not before, but in this step we systemize, we make sense of what we are learning, we create needs, insights, we frame the right problem to solve. There might be more than one, so we pick up the one that is most relevant for us and the customer, and we move on. The example might sound like how we make waiting in line more enjoyable. Very simple problem-solving statement. As we move forward, ideation is about generating a range of creative solutions. Techniques can be brainstorming, mind mapping, Scamper. The rule here is defer judgment. Avoid judgment and just allow yourself to be creative and come up with ideas that can solve this current problem. This might take some time, and you, of course, don't use a traditional brainstorming, use always some different techniques. One of them is a mind mapping technique, which is natural to brain process and the way how neurons brain work by nature. Again, in the middle is the main core idea or problem that we are solving, branching out main categories, areas that we want to focus on, and then branching out from those main ones are the ones that are associated by some kind of common feature or characteristic to the main core branch. In this case, it's okay to be colorful, to use images, pictures, icons, and actually the more there are there, the better it is, and it's more playful, more easier to remember and to create it. Idea is also not to make it too big. The theory recommends that there should be, so there is one layer, there is two, there is three, max 3 layers of your ideas, or maybe 4, and as it comes to the branches, should be not more than 8 of them. All right, so you can use just few words, few expressions, like one word or so on. If it's something too big or you want to use more graphic design, you can also use images. To learn more and watch how mind map really works more in depth than I'm explaining, there's a link here that you can click and in a few minutes learn more about mind mapping. The close to that diagram of Lotus, where in the center we have core problem, squares around that are associated with that problem that has connection somehow that makes sense for you, and you take that one problem that are in, or the solutions in those squares outside, and you have squares around them. So same way as in the mind map, here you have, let's say, more controlled environment where you have to produce 8 squares here, 8 squares here, 8 squares here, and say 8 squares here. If you want, you can carry on further on, but in this case, it's already gonna create you enough solutions and enough ideas to move on. All you need later is just to filter them. Again, to learn more, I attached the link so you could really understand how the process is working. Then the next stage is prototyping, creating a mock-up or a test object for your research to see if what you came up with really works, is relevant, and people need it. The way we do it is building a quick, rough representations of ideas. It can be a draft, brochure, presentation, pitch, mock-up, or just one-time product. Types can be paper prototypes, role-playing, storyboards, and so on. The goal here is to make ideas tangible and facilitate the feedback. All you need now is also, again, the input from your customers to get the feedback, which direction you should go to stay relevant and to make it more custom, more needed for your customer, so that you solve their problems without making any assumptions, only for them, not for yourself. All right, and the last stage is testing, where you refine through feedback your product, services, or a project. Gather feedback from the users, refine and iterate the prototypes. Again, here you have to think again carefully how you collect the feedback to make it as accurate and objective as you can. So again, it can be observations, some kind of feedback forms, recording analysis, interviews, and so on. In this case, you might have some failures, some mistakes, so it's fine. The faster you fail, the faster you can grow and improve your product or project. Right, so one of the case studies is case with MRI and kids, whereas the initial problem in this case was MRI procedures were expensive and often yield poor results when scanning children who are scared and move constantly. So the challenge here is that expensive procedure and kids are not still when it's being performed because of the fear. Right, so in this case, the design thinking approach, empathizing, is the teams interviewed the children and observed their fear. Right, we observe without any assumptions, realizing the machine was the problem, not the child. So what they did, they asked themselves, how might we make MRI experience feel safe and fun for child? The solution in this case was an adventure series that transformed the MRI machine into a pirate ship, spaceship, and underwater submarine. So in this case, kids feel like they are going to an adventure, and experience that is much more fun, and they can actually be engaged into the process way more peacefully and calmly than before. So they didn't need to change the machine or anything. They just had to change the experience that the kids were having. As a result, there was reduced need for children to use sedation drugs to calm them down, and a 90% increase in patient satisfaction. This number is really, really big and impressive. Just a small change in the process caused massive cost savings and 90% increase in satisfaction. So again, not making assumptions, but observing how your customer, where is the real problem, what's happening there. Another case is Airbnb's survival, whereas the initial problem was early Airbnb stage. The company was failing, bookings were stagnant despite the rise of the travel sharing. In design thinking approach, what the founders did was they used a service. They flew to New York, where they met the clients, where they met the customers, they spoke with them, they spoke also with the first-time workers, and they realized that the photos posted by the host were terrible. Well, that's normal. Not everybody has great devices to take the picture, and of course, not everybody are able to take the pictures as a professional photographer. Right? So we had an issue on the behavior when it comes to the neurological alignment. The product looked unreliable and of course terrible, so people avoided to go into these apartments. So what happened? They created a prototype, they quickly rented a high quality camera and took better photos of the listing themselves. So the owners themselves went out of their way just to make things work. Right? So also here is the lesson that if you are CEO, if you're a boss, main manager, doesn't mean you do not need to do first line workers' job. Sometimes you do just to push your company further. Next, test and iterate. Bookings immediately improved. There was more attention, more confidence. They had improved they have proved that a simple non-tech intervention was a solution. Well, not entirely non-tech, but because they had to improve the camera and hard skills to how to learn how to take the pictures. But they decodified this as a service, not as a product feature. So again, they managed to monetize and added this feature to their offer for the house owners, and this way to increase confidence, interest in Airbnb's services and the platform. And one thing that is very rarely used is the updated version of design thinking process. And in this updated version, we have nothing else at the end. We have one thing before the empathization, which is understanding. Understanding is about making sense and learning about the problem that you investigate. So in this case, we're learning about the context, about the related issues with the problems before we go to the customers. We basically know the market, we do the research of the market, see what's happening there, what are the regulations, what are the waves, what are the moods, how is the market moving, right? So in this case, we determine if the initial identified problem is really a problem. So not to solve something that doesn't need to be solved, right? We just understand the context, we learn more about the problem itself, then we gain deeper understanding about the customers, users, how they interact, what they struggle with, and then we move on to the traditional approach. It's entirely up to you how deep you want to go into these two stages. My personal opinion, they are important and they are relevant because it adds value to your offer. However, it's your risk and the choice if you want to eliminate some steps to gather more information and intel. That is it from today's lecture about design thinking and how to approach things more strategic way, more through the framework, step by step. And okay. And that is it for today. All it is really briefly about design thinking, about this magnificent framework where you can go through the process of brainstorming ideas for the projects, organization, products, services, in more strategic, more intentional way, using different techniques in each of the steps. To finish it up properly, there is a home assignment that you have to do and upload on Moodle by the deadline. So everyone, please go to the Moodle. There is under the section of design thinking, you will find the instructions and the slides of this presentation, and you will be able to access the framework, the template for the framework. Your job is to choose Shatco Living company to fill in the form, or you can choose some other organization, entirely up to you to choose. I'm just requiring you to take this job seriously. Try to be as much as you can in depth, and you can do this in your groups that were assigned for the final project. If there's any questions, comments to add, or things to clarify, feel free to do so. As of now, all the main information is on Moodle, so go there and look at it. Thank you for watching. See you in the class.